The strategic and economic dialogue between China and the U.S. is wrapped up here in Washington. Both sides tackle a jam-packed agenda ranging from a CEO summit to talk of a landmark cooperation when it comes to the world's oceans. Someone who's been there watching all of this is Nathan King. He's here in the studio with us right now. I'm going to hand it over to you for the highlights of these talks. It's been a fascinating couple of days. I've been at the State Department, and there have been 400 Chinese officials, the biggest s&ed ever, 13 ministers from China, 40 vice ministers. You know, we talk about strategic and economic dialogue, but it's all points in between as well. And I just want to bring you this, that one of our Mandarin colleagues just spoke in a press conference wrapping up with Jack Lew, the U.S. Treasury Secretary, and he highlighted what the top three things, the three achievements he thinks came out of this s&ed.
The three areas that I think are the most significant, and there were many areas of accomplishment, but I'm just going to address three, were the exchange rate issues that I've already discussed, the detailed discussions we had regarding market access and the level of engagement to make progress as we go forward on the BIT, and the discussions we had on the area of the information and communication technology, ICT issues. I think that, you know, in a sense, the entire s&ed was preparation for the leaders' meeting, in the sense that it was in everyone's mind that the work that we didn't complete, we needed to push down the road, because when our leaders meet, those issues have to be further developed.
Yeah, I just want to say the BIT that Jack Lew mentioned there is the bilateral investment treaty that China and the US are negotiating. This is a big deal. It probably won't get done before the Trans-Pacific Partnership, but the hope is it would be done before US President Barack Obama leaves office. That is a big deal. But for many here, the US, remember, may have been critical of China's land reclamation efforts in the South China Sea recently, but that isn't stopping the world's two biggest economies from cooperating when it comes to establishing rules for the high seas and preserving their resources and wildlife for future generations.
Military aircraft.
The recent U.S. close-in flights over Chinese-claimed territory in the South China Sea raised tensions between Washington and Beijing. But here in the U.S. Capitol this week, there were handshakes when it came to the high seas.
The ocean features more and more prominently in China's economic and social development, ecological protection, and opening up. The Chinese government values international maritime cooperation and is committed to working with all the countries in the world to build maritime passages, maintain maritime security, develop the blue economy, harness marine resources so as to foster harmony, cooperation, and the sound environment of the ocean.
By the year 2025, experts say for every 3 tons of fish in the world's oceans, there could be 1 ton of plastics and trash. Discussing strategic differences while focusing on pressing environmental issues like these is the goal.
It's particularly important that we are doing this now with respect to the oceans, because we haven't agreed on every aspect of maritime policy, but it indicates that we're working hard to address differences and to find the areas of commonality.
Searching for commonality too when it comes to commerce. The China-U.S. CEO roundtable held a stone's throw from the White House, focused on building the investment environment while both countries continue to try and reach agreement on a landmark bilateral investment treaty. At the White House, U.S. President Barack Obama met with Chinese President Xi Jinping's personal envoys, 2 vice premiers and a state councillor. And of course, in less than 3 months' time, the Chinese president will be in the Oval Office himself with the US president for his first state visit here. Much of the groundwork laid this week in Washington will actually lead to more agreements, from climate to commerce, during that trip, laying more of the groundwork, Phil, for what China calls, of course, the new model for great power relations. It's been just an amazing meet. The statistics you're saying, 400 people in the Chinese delegation being here in Washington. Help us out for a moment there. Take off the technical hat and sort of the common folk, the average person watching TV. We're not in the meetings. We don't know a lot about the meetings. Does the public in the United States, for that matter, the public in the rest of the world, even in China for that matter, how concerned should they be about these important dialogues? Yeah, I know what you mean. It feels a bit top-down this week inside Washington, doesn't it? But, you know, if you go outside Washington, this is already happening between US and China in a big way. Chinese investment, as you know, is the fastest growing foreign direct investment in the United States. Okay, 80 jobs at the moment, but actually it's going to grow probably to 100,000, 200,000 by 2020. And if you look at small-sized firms in the Midwest who are in auto business or whatever, they want to invest in China. That's where they want to invest. You have mayors from how everyone worked to these reforms of much more internal market economy. So this is already happening out the Beltway. What's interesting about this is that you get 400 Chinese officials coming over, talking to their American counterparts. So basically, we're talking about 1,000 people getting together. This is not the siloed talks that we're used to between different government departments. This is cross-pollination on an incredible level. So this forms relationships, it forms trust, and also, when it comes to difficult issues, you know who to pick up the phone and call because you went out for dinner with them.
Perhaps governor someday.
I'm sure you do.
Thank you very much. Now, two-way trade between the U.S. and China has topped nearly $600 billion last year, despite the tensions. During Wednesday's CEO roundtable discussion, the U.S. and China stressed the importance of business leaders in strengthening economic ties, creating those jobs, and promoting growth. Chinese Vice Premier Wang Yang said that when political officials sit together, they find there are too many problems. But when business leaders sit together, they find opportunities. Business leaders also had a chance to raise their concerns.
Every year, a third or a quarter of our employees who applied for visas get rejected. We have 50 U.S. employees and only one Chinese employee who has gotten a U.S. work visa. This has created investment hurdles in the U.S.
We run a copper processing company. The U.S. is our largest exporter market. We hope the U.S. will be more cautious about launching anti-dumping investigations as a way to deal with trade frictions.